Trump is doing this to demonstrate that he can work his will against Senate Republicans on a whim. And he is going to force them to debase themselves publicly to defend the indefensible as a means of projecting his power onto them.
They're going to criticize no matter what. What I think they should be doing is focusing on what's best for Rhode Island and the United States as a whole.
The Rhode Island Republican Party chair, that's him. Joe Powers is in studio with me to talk about Donald Trump's big win.
Commissioner and her staff is supposed to be providing that oversight, and it's not happening.
The district has been doing what it has to do. It is going to be a hard time for everyone. We understand that. But if you don't invest in the school system, then what do we have?
And the school funding fight between the mayor of Providence and the Rhode Island Education Commissioner.
Holding the powerful accountable from Washington, D.C. to right here in southern New England. This is 10 News Conference with Gene Valicenti.
Nominated him for, I guess, if you like health and if you like people that live a long time, it's the most important position, RFK Jr. Bobby, we want you to come up with things and ideas and what you've been talking about for a long time, and I think you're going to do some unbelievable thing. Nobody's going to be able to do it like you.
Well, talk about out of the box. RFK Jr. for Health and Human Services, Pete Hegseth from Fox for Defense, and maybe Gates, the congressman from Florida, for Attorney General. Good morning, I'm Gene Valicenti. What a week it's been. And the person to have in is to react to all of this is the Rhode Island Republican Party Chair, Joe Powers. Joe, welcome back to 10 News Conference.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I saw you on the news earlier in the week, and you say elections have consequences. Trump won. Deal with it. Did I summarize what you've been saying?
Well, in a rough way, yes. And I think people have a better understanding of what it is that we're looking to get done in the United States, and the people have definitively spoken. And I think what Trump is bringing to the table right now is not only bold, but it's brash, and it's what I think the United States needs to kind of shake things up.
Now, listen, sometimes Rhode Island Republicans can be different than other Republicans,
sure.
Right? Chafee and his son, and even Maine, Collins, sort of moderate Republicans can work with everybody. Is that the kind of Republican you are? Can you say that not everything Donald Trump is doing is right?
Yeah. So to say whether or not anybody in this world is doing everything 100% correct, you're never going to find that person. To say that Rhode Island Republicans are different from other Republicans, well, I think all of Rhode Island is different from everything in the United States. You don't find what you have in Rhode Island anywhere else. The way that I work is, from a business perspective, is I sit back and I watch and I listen. I go 30,000 foot and I watch to see what the process is going to be. I don't like to knee-jerk react. I'm not the guy that jumps on Twitter and automatically throws out responses.
All right, so if you're flying over Mar-a-Lago, you're seeing RFK Jr. for Health and Human Services. Yeah. That's out of the box.
Yeah.
He's got his critics. You know, even Republicans are wondering about RFK Jr. for Health and Human Services. New York Post, not a liberal newspaper by any stretch of the imagination. The editorial board interviewed him. When we came to topics on his views, it was a head-scratching spaghetti of what we can only call warped conspiracy headlines. That's a New York Post.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Again, the bold moves that Donald Trump is making, and first and foremost, let's acknowledge the fact that he is a Democrat. And he was pushed out of the Democratic Party into independent and finally decided to move over to the Republican side, where he's working hand in hand with Donald Trump. Do I think everything that he's going to be putting into play, it's going to go right back to not everybody has the right answers, Gene. What it's going to be is this is the guy who's actually going to bring a lot of things to light that I think is going to surprise people on how things have been handled in the United States. And I like a lot of his ideas, not all of them, but a lot of them.
Well, if it's kind of a dish of spaghetti, I guess we could find meatballs that everybody agrees upon.
Yeah.
He's against big pharma, and a lot of people are.
Yeah.
And big food, big agriculture, a lot of ingredients in our food that the Europeans don't have. So there's something there to pick and choose. On vaccines, though, he's an anti-vaxxer. I mean, he's kind of the original anti-vaxxer. Does that make that difficult for you? My kids are vaxxed, and I know plenty of docs who say get the vaccine.
You know, a father of four, a brother to 6 brothers and sisters, my mother who ran a daycare, taking care of multiple kids. I guess you're going to have that conversation primarily more with a conspiracy theorist on what is going to be good and what's going to be bad. And that's going to hold true for the food industry. It's going to hold true for the drug industry, the vaccines and things of that sort. Again, I'm not going to knee-jerk react. I want to see the information. I want to make sure that it's tangible, and I want to make sure it's usable. Because if it's not, then we're all just just going to be responding on emotion, and that never works well for people.
My kids were vaxxed. Are your kids vaxxed?
Yes,
I'm going
they
to
are.
assume yes.
Yep.
All right. Let's move on to Pete Hegseth.
Yeah.
Weekend Fox News anchor, decorated, by the way, decorated military
sir.
veteran, Ivy League graduate. Spent a good portion of his life helping veterans' causes. However, he's never really run anything big of substance. This is one of the biggest departments in government. Millions of employees, billions of dollars. And his critics say he's just not up to that. As decorated as he might be, as well-intentioned as he might be, this guy is not Secretary of Defense material.
Well, I mean, that remains to be seen in my eyes. A battalion leader to the big boss, which is what he has been in the past. He has dedicated a lot of his life to the causes for all military, to which I thank him for his service, and my fellow veterans do as well. Do I think he's the absolute right person for it? Again, Gene, we're going to have to wait until all the information comes out, because here's the beauty of leadership. If you come into any sort of leadership location or any type of leadership position, and you think you have all the answers, you're not the right person. This is the reason why we have people working with us to help us what it is that we need to do, because we can't be the smartest person in the room.
All right, listen, maybe the toughest one for you to defend is going to be Congressman Gates from Florida. You know, we're taping on a Friday. We could get an investigation out of the Ethics Committee in Congress that's been looking into whether or not he had sex with an underage girl. And the leaks say the girl came in and testified and say, yes, he did. Is he really the right guy for AG? Now, by the way, footnote, he denies all of that.
Right,
he says if she testified, she's lying to Congress.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Again, if we wait, and I hate to keep using this as an answer, I won't knee-jerk react to anything unless I see all of the information out there. Do I think it's the right move right now, if this is what we're looking for? If I do, I think it's the right move right now to put somebody like him as polarizing as his situation is? Probably not. But again, it could have been one of those moves that Donald Trump was trying to do to shake the tree, to try to get people to pay attention to what they're doing. Do I think ultimately he's going to make it through? He could, but I think he's going to be one of the hardest ones to get through.
Donald Trump didn't call you and run them by you.
Well, I did miss a phone call from Florida, but I don't think it was him.
Wasn't him. And you didn't pick them. And you're the face of the party, so you have to sit here and take the question.
Yeah.
All right. But it's early on. Okay? It's only been like 2 weeks.
We'll see what happens.
Let's move to local things that you maybe can answer a little more forcefully on. The Republican Party has been perennially troubled in Rhode Island. You just can't get it. You lose seats, you scramble. What is it, Joe? You've been here. Can't you turn it around? What is it?
Yeah. So when I took the role, Gene, you and I spoke back in April of last year, I believe it was. It was right after I took the seat. I was in analyst mode. I was in a mode of trying to figure things out. I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but I'm not a politician. I'm a politician by definition. I'm just a local resident who is a voter who just got sick and tired of being sick and tired and finally decided to step up. That's what I'm looking for in people to help us in the state of Rhode Island. There's a lot of them, but unfortunately, not everyone is intrigued on wanting to step up and actually make some noise because of the Democratic rule that we've had, and they're afraid of what their recourse may be. My job right now is to get people to want to make the investment in the Republican Party. 47% of registered voters are unaffiliated, which means they bounce back and forth, and they can go back and forth. But these last results that we just got, where Donald Trump made headway between, we went from 20% up on the Democrats down to 13.7%. That's insane. That's a huge jump. That Donald Trump gained 0.32% on Kamala Harris than he did in Joe Biden. There's a lot of different factors that go into it, but we're going to harp on that, and we're going to use that to recruit more people.
He did better. Why didn't your party do better in local races, legislative races? You got one in Johnson, I'll say that. State Rep Fosh's coming in. That was with the help of the mayor and his father there, I understand. A little bit. They're Democrats.
Well, it could be, and that's not to take anything away from the candidate. Richard Fosher worked his tail off. He did everything exactly right. He worked what he needed to work. He knocked on the doors. He pressed flesh. He talked to people. He had a lot of help from a lot of volunteers and everything, as did everybody in the state. They all worked their tail off, and I commend each and every one of them for the amount of work that they did. But I will say this. We did more with less this time. Remember, I was part of the class of 22 that ran. There was 70 of us that ran. We got one seat. We had a lot less people run this time. We actually picked up 2 seats. We actually, Marie Hopkins out in 21 in Warwick. She beat the recount yesterday. And we also had Chris Paplaskas, who was able to retain Barbara Ann Fenton-Funk's seat by beating out that recount and everything. So we were able to retain 2 out of the 3 seats that were actually lost from people stepping aside to do other things. And then we picked up 2 additional seats in the House, which is going to be great.
All right. Well, listen, you have to spin it any way you can. If that's the positive news, then that's the positive news. What do you need? You need money? What do you need?
You know, I was the guy that used to sit and watch politics and think to myself, I can't believe they're raising this much money. How come they can't do the same thing for homeless? Why can't they do the same thing for vets? And I see what the party does, and I see what is needed. We need time and dime. Are the two things that I tell people all the time. If you don't have the money to help us do what we need to do for recruiting purposes, then all I ask is you put in your time. Come in, volunteer some time, make some phone calls. The intention of us is to get loud right now. And what I mean by that is, I started this last year, was we want to be first to the microphone. We're going to tell everybody who we are and what we're about. And we're going to make sure we, too, like Donald Trump, start shining the light on things that people in Rhode Island, I feel, and the party feels, they should be made aware of.
Well, you got Mayor Hopkins. He's like the man in the Alamo.
Did a great job.
The city hall's like the Alamo now. The one Republican mayor who's back in.
Yeah.
And maybe here's a bright side. You know, for a long time, there's a lot of talk about a lot of Democrats in Rhode Island who really would be Republicans. And some of them want to hold the firewall between the progressives. They're Democrats. They won't call themselves Republicans, but some people think they really are Republicans. They think like Republicans. Is that an area for you to mine? Can you get some of these people over and say, why don't you just,
Yeah, Gene, so since day one, I've been having those conversations. When I would get somebody that would call me, or I'd meet them at a fundraiser or something, very cordial, and I'd speak to them, and they would lean in. You know, I'm very conservative. I'm probably more Republican, but I do this. I was actually told when I ran, hey, go as an independent, you'll get a 15% bump. And I was just like, I refuse to do that simply because I'm not going to lie to people on who I really am. Having the tag or the moniker of being a potential elected official or politician, people automatically think what you're saying isn't true. But that is definitively a field of people that I've already been speaking to, and I have been for the last year and a half. And I think what happened with Donald Trump is going to help those conversations going, to get people to kind of step into the light and just be a little bit more forceful with the conservative train of thoughts and actually start coming over across the aisle.
So without mentioning names, there are Democrats in office who behave like Republicans, and most of us know who they are. You've had conversations with people like that. And what do they tell you? I just can't get elected with a D in front of my name. With an R in front of my name, rather. It's impossible.
Let me tell you, it's that is part of it. I mean, is that 100% of the answers? No, but that ends up coming up in the conversation. Joe, let's be honest, in Rhode Island, having an R after your name doesn't automatically put you on the top of the list for most people in the state. I'd rather be able to get in and do what I can do with the time that I have just by utilizing the Democrat name to do it. And let's be honest, the Democrat machine in Rhode Island is very robust. And that's the other thing that I'm fighting against as well, trying to make sure that we start building what we need to build. And I ask everybody, give us some time, give us a dime to actually help us out where we need to get to.
You had more Republicans do early voting and mail-in ballots because they saw what happened. The Democrats control that game. Final question, 30 seconds left. If you go to Mar-a-Lago and you get a chance to meet with President Trump after the inauguration, maybe before, what would you tell him if you had a minute of his time? What would you say?
Well, the first thing I would say is fantastic job and thank you for stepping up. Because let's be honest, he doesn't have to do this. This guy could be sitting in Mar-a-Lago all he wants, golfing as many rounds of golf as he wants to. But I think everybody understands that too many rounds of golf will rack your brain. But the first thing I would say to him is thank you very much for everything that you've done for the country and everything that you're willing to do and step forward and putting yourself literally in the target line to make sure that Rhode Island and the United States is great again.
Short answer. What would you ask him for Rhode Island? I need your help on this. Would you ask him, hey, give us the money for the bridge? What would you do?
Recognition. This is all I want. My entire job is to make sure that we get Rhode Island on the forefront. I had this conversation with somebody yesterday, and I said, I am willing to make Rhode Island the ice pick to crack the ice in New England, to start getting it flipped over to the Republicans, and I'll do everything I can to make that happen.
All right, Rhode Island Republican Party Chair Joe Powers, thanks. The presidency is yours, the House, the Senate. It was a good day overall for your party nationally. You have work to do on a local level. Thanks for coming. We'll see you again.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Okay.